Once you have that temporary permit in your hand, a completely new challenge begins, actually surviving on Chinese roads without getting your license instantly revoked. If you missed my last video on getting your temporary Chinese license, click here to check it out. Let's start with the basics. China is a left-hand drive country, and everyone drives on the right. If you are from the US, Canada, or Europe, you'll feel right at home. If you are from the UK, Australia, or Singapore, your brain will need a minute to adjust to the mirrored indicators and wipers. Another visual you'll notice immediately is the color of the license plates. Green plates mean it's an EV or hybrid, while blue or yellow plates mean it's a traditional gas car. You're going to see a ton of those green plates, as electric vehicles are incredibly common here. But trust me, which side of the car the steering wheel is on is the absolute easiest part of this journey. The real test is adapting to China's driving culture and its hyper-automated road rules. If you don't understand the unwritten rules, you will ruin your trip before the first tank of gas is empty. But don't panic. There is one single app that bridges the gap between you and the local driving culture, acting as your ultimate survival shield. Amap. Before you even think about putting the car into drive, delete Google Maps from your mind. In China, Google services are blocked, making it completely useless. The single most important tool for your survival is a local navigation app called Amap. Now, you might be wondering, can I just use Apple Maps instead? Well, yes, you can. But in China, Apple Maps actually runs on Amap's mapping data and API anyway. So you're basically using a simplified version of Amap. To get the absolute best experience, it's much better to just go straight to the source and download the actual Amap app. Now, the great news is that Amap has finally released an official English version, making road trips fully accessible for international travelers without needing to know a word of Chinese. However, this simplified English version has been stripped of many advanced features found in the original Chinese app. But don't worry, the core navigation is solid. For example, in the US, drivers use Waze to report police speed traps so the community can slow down and avoid fines. But in China, things work differently. You won't get pulled over by a traffic cop on the highway. Instead, almost everything about traffic is automated. It's all tracked by millions of cameras, speed sensors, and big data networks that sync instantly to a central database. Because of this, learning how Amap alerts you to these cameras so you can avoid automatic fines becomes a pretty interesting game. There are speed cameras, pedestrian yielding cameras, illegal lane change cameras, and even cameras that check if you're wearing your seatbelt or glancing at your phone. If you break a rule, the system snaps a high-res photo, matches your rental license plate, and logs the fine before you even hit the next exit. But don't panic too much. The good news is that the actual ticket amounts here are surprisingly low, usually just a few hundred yuan, unlike back home, where a single traffic ticket can easily cost you 400 to 500 bucks. Most fines here are quite modest, so you still don't want to collect them like souvenirs. Now, there are a few critical camera traps you need to look out for. The first one is section speed enforcement. Unlike a regular speed trap that catches you at a single point, this measures your average speed over a long stretch of highway. If your average speed exceeds the limit by too much, you get a ticket. But how much is too much? Well, Amap is incredibly sensitive to these rules. In fact, you can actually get away with driving slightly over the limit, up to 10% on highways and 20% on city roads without any penalties. But the moment you cross that line, the entire Amap screen will literally flash bright red, giving you a screaming heads up that a speed camera is actively scanning just up the road and you're about to get a ticket. The second camera trap you need to watch out for is the illegal lane change camera. In China, highway and urban exits often have long solid white lines leading up to them. If you try to cut in late and cross that solid line, and there's a camera overhead, you're getting snapped. But here is where it gets really fun. Because of strict local regulations, the app can't always tell you everything explicitly, so it uses secret codes and hidden hints that we locals know. For example, if you're driving through a city at night and Amap suddenly pops up a voice reminder saying, "Don't drink and drive," that's the app's coded way of telling you there is a police sobriety checkpoint right ahead. Or if you're cruising on the highway and the navigation screen suddenly zooms out on its own, it's giving you a subtle hint. There are no speed cameras for a long stretch ahead, so you can finally let loose and enjoy the drive. Basically, driving in China is completely doable even if you don't read a single word of Chinese. Just switch Amap to English, follow its precise audio cues and hidden hints, and you won't have a single issue on the road. Also, if you ever find Amap's constant chatter a bit too frequent or annoying, you can easily tweak the settings to tone down the voice alerts so it only pings you for critical camera traps. Welcome to the real test, driving on China's urban and local roads. If you come from a Western country, you are likely taught that checking your blind spot, the classic shoulder check, is an absolute religion. Here is a massive culture shock. In China, local drivers rarely check their blind spots before changing lanes. They will simply turn on their blinker and start merging immediately. And of course, sometimes they don't even bother with the blinker. To survive, you must play active defensive driving. If you see a car creeping toward your lane, assume they are coming in and adjust your speed accordingly. And then there are the silent electric scooters. Millions of delivery riders and commuters on silent e-bikes will split lanes and pop out from angles you cannot see. When making a right turn at any city intersection, you need to be extremely cautious because those scooters will not slow down for you. They expect you to dodge them. But the real mind-bender in Chinese cities comes from the lane layouts and traffic light rules. First, before you even enter an intersection, keep an eye out for the blue overhead or roadside signs. In some major intersections, the left turn lane is actually located on the far right side of the road instead of the far left. You might also notice some left turn lanes don't actually go all the way to the traffic lights. Instead, they feature a dashed opening in the median before you reach the intersection, allowing you to make an early U-turn. If the line is dashed on your side, you can make your turn directly without waiting for the intersection light. But remember, you do not have the right of way, so make sure to yield to oncoming traffic first. Second, making a right turn. Generally, you don't need to wait for traffic coming from the left or oncoming vehicles turning left. You can slowly and assertively nose your way in. But keep a close eye on the traffic light. If the light is a solid red circle, you are legally allowed to turn right after stopping to check for oncoming traffic, pedestrians, and those silent scooters coming from your rear right. However, if the light is a red right arrow, you must stop completely and wait. And if it's a green right arrow, you have the absolute right of way to proceed. Third, you will encounter something called the left turn waiting zone. These are dashed lanes that extend into the middle of the intersection. Here is how you use them without getting a ticket. If the straight ahead light is red, do not enter the waiting zone. Once the straight ahead light turns green, even if the left turn light is still red, you pull forward into that dashed waiting zone and wait. The moment the left turn light finally turns green, you can make your turn. Now, if this sounds like a lot to process, don't panic. There are plenty of official resources and guides online detailing China's road rules that you can review before your trip. But most importantly, as long as you just follow the voice prompts on Amap and drive exactly how it tells you to, you won't run into any major issues at all. Alright, let's talk about getting onto the highway. In China, almost all highways are toll roads. But don't worry, you won't need to fumble for pocket change or struggle with credit cards. If you rent your car from a major provider like Ehai, it will almost always come with a neat little device mounted right next to your rearview mirror. This is called an ETC, which stands for Electronic Toll Collection. Having this little device means you get to skip the slow manual lines and use the express ETC lanes. Here is exactly how to use it so you don't look like a clueless tourist. As you approach the toll plaza, look for the lanes marked with green ETC signs. But first rule, slow down. Do not try to fly through these gates at highway speed. As you approach the barrier, your windshield device will make a quick beep sound. The gate will lift up, and you're officially on the highway. When you're ready to exit the highway, it's the exact same game. Look for the green ETC exit lane, slow down, wait for the beep to automatically deduct the toll from your rental account, and you're free to go. But what if the gate doesn't open? Or what if your rental car's ETC malfunctions? Don't panic, and definitely do not back up. Instead, there are always staff members standing nearby, and a staff member will come right over to help you sort out the issue. Once you leave the chaotic city center and hit the highway, the experience shifts completely. Frankly, the infrastructure here is incredible. The roads are wide, beautifully paved, and generally have a speed limit of 120 kilometers per hour. The first thing you need to watch out for is the cliff drop speed limit. While you're cruising comfortably at 120, you will suddenly see a sign for a tunnel or a bridge, and the speed limit will instantly drop to 100 or even 80. And yes, there is almost always a speed camera waiting for you right at the entrance of that tunnel. To help you prep for these speed drops, keep an eye on the road for these weird diamond-shaped patterns painted on both sides of your lane. Locals call them fishbone lines, and they are designed to create a visual illusion that the lane is narrowing, naturally forcing you to ease off the gas. When you see the fishbones, it's your cue to slow down, because a camera or a tunnel is right around the corner. Speaking of tunnels, here is a rule. Do not change lanes inside a tunnel. The lines inside are marked with solid white lines, and the entire stretch is heavily monitored by overhead cameras. If you cross that line, you're getting an automatic ticket. Just pick a lane before you enter, keep a steady pace, and stay in it until you see daylight. Second, while driving, you will also encounter giant metal gantries over the highway packed with cameras that fire off an insanely blinding white flash directly into your windshield as you pass. Do not panic. Those blinding flashes don't mean you just got a speeding ticket. In China, this is standard automated traffic flow monitoring and AI tracking to check if you are wearing your seatbelt or touching your phone. As long as Amap tells you your speed is fine, just ignore the flash and keep driving. Driving at night actually comes with a pretty wild visual feature. If you're cruising down a dark stretch of highway and suddenly see giant, pulsing green lasers shooting across the sky, don't panic. You haven't stumbled into a sci-fi movie or a highway rave. These are actually anti-fatigue laser lights. They are completely safe for your eyes and are designed by traffic authorities to stimulate your brain and keep you awake on long drives. It looks incredibly cool on camera and actually works surprisingly well. Finally, you can't talk about Chinese highways without mentioning the service areas. Seriously, forget those sad gas stations with stale coffee you might find back home. Service areas in China are on a completely different level. Many of them literally look like high-end shopping malls. You can grab some KFC soft serve, sit down for authentic local dishes, gas up, fast charge your EV, or even stroll through actual indoor gardens. Plus, every single service area has restrooms equipped with both Western-style toilets and local squat toilets, and they are generally kept very clean and tidy. It makes long-distance road trips incredibly easy, knowing that every 50 to 100 kilometers, there is a literal oasis waiting to refuel both you and your car. Now, let's talk about why this video is titled How to Drive in China Without Getting Fines. Don't worry, it's not as scary as it sounds. But there is one very important rule you need to know to keep your trip stress-free: the 12-point system. Just like local drivers, your temporary permit comes with a fresh start of 12 points. Run a red light? That's 6 points. But here is a trap for foreigners, looking at your phone while waiting at a red light. You might think, hey, the car is stopped, so it's fine, right? Nope. In China, waiting at a red light is still legally considered driving. Those overhead cameras will snap you, and that's an easy 2 to 3 points gone. Now, if you absolutely must tap your screen, your best bet is to check the Amap first to see if there's a camera icon nearby. If you catch my drift. What about stepping on a solid white line? That's another 1 to 3 points, assuming you get caught by those hawk-eyed cameras, which, let's be honest, you absolutely will. But here is the deal. If your points hit 0, your temporary permit is simply suspended. The only way you'd actually get into any real legal trouble is if you choose to ignore the suspension and keep driving anyway. As long as you don't do that, you are completely fine. And honestly, keeping your 12 points fully intact is incredibly easy. The road infrastructure in China is actually built incredibly well. As long as you follow the flow of traffic and let Amap guide you, you won't have a single issue. Plus, driving here is relatively safe because the strict speed limits make it almost impossible to speed. You will rarely, if ever, see reckless street racing on these roads. But I gotta be honest, the road rage here is very real and pretty hilarious to watch. If you really want to see a completely different side of China, and you don't want to be stuck on a tourist bus or a guided tour, doing a road trip here is absolutely doable. Personally, I highly recommend it, and I think you are going to absolutely love traveling this way. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next adventure. Drive safe, and I'll see you in the next one.